The markets were red today and things sold down. Is that a sign of more bearishness to come or just a simple dip before we rocket higher? Find out in today's video here on Courage Pays Better Than Fear. What's going on, everybody? Jeremy Ritz here. Courage Pays Better Than Fear Trading. Very grateful that you're joining me here today to talk about the selling that we saw in the markets. I am outside enjoying the cool breeze here, a preview of autumn at the tail end of August, and excited to be talking to you about what was a red day in the market, something that we haven't had really this significant since August 1st. And when I say significant, it really wasn't even that big of a sell down. And so I have my handy dandy cell phone here to be able to point out numbers. And if we look at the SPX, it dropped 37.8 points. At one point in time, it was down about 47 points, and it did come off of those lows. And when you have a lot of green like we've had recently, a 37-point dip can feel like quite the move downward. And the question we have to ask is this a sign of things to come? Is there more bearishness that's going to enter the market, or is this just a simple dip? And what we need to do to grasp and understand what's happening is just take a look at some of the factors right now in terms of what's happening in the market. And first, we have to start with we were just at all-time highs. If I pull up the SPX here, and if I'm looking at the daily chart, it was just 2 days ago that we were at all-time highs before we started to sell down, and that was on Friday. So we had a new all-time high made on the SPX then, and we had an indecision day yesterday, Monday, and today we had that bearish day. And we closed slightly below that 10-day exponential moving average, but we have to keep in mind that we're, in terms of a technical basis, we're near the top. We're near all-time high. So we do need a retracement. We do need a pullback. What does that look like? We won't know, but it makes sense for that to happen. So a dip seems more likely in terms of a major crash. But remember, a dip can be 3%, 5%, 10%. If we're talking a market correction, you can even go down as low as 20%. It's just when you break that 20% and get over that is when you enter bear territory. Now, does that mean something like that is coming? Probably not. More than likely, what we're getting is just a dip. And what is it about this week that is injecting some uncertainty, some volatility in the market? Again, I want to make sure I point this out. 30-some points is not a big deal in terms of moving down. But what is happening this week in terms of data or news? Really, there's not a ton of data this week that's going to drive the markets. It's really all about Friday and Jerome Powell's speech at Jackson Hole. And I've talked about how before in previous years when Powell has spoke at Jackson Hole, last year really was a nothing burger. But if you go back to 2022, and this is when there were rate increases that were occurring, he mentioned how there was going to be pain that households were going to have to shoulder, and that caused a massive sell-off. And what has been transpiring whenever we hear Powell talk is his comments are thinly veiled criticism of tariffs. And there is this unspoken feud, at least from Powell's perspective. He won't come out and be critical of the president, but Powell or Trump will. We've seen him call him too late, and he says he's a loser, that he needs to be fired, all these things. So Powell is taking shots. He is undercutting Trump through veiled criticism. And so there is some sentiment out there that believes that Powell is going to be hawkish in his comments and statements this Friday at Jackson Hole. And if you look at market makers, if you look at that CME Fed watch tool, you could see that they are pricing in a rate cut in September. But a lot of people are wondering if Powell's rhetoric on Friday is going to be in alignment with that, if he does see rate cuts, if he still sees strength in the economy. And so because of that uncertainty, we are seeing a bit of selling happening right now. And that's what we saw here today. And the question is are we going to see more of that? Well, we have to wait and see what Powell says on Friday. And just so you guys know, I will be live streaming that speech from Jackson Hole from Powell so we can watch that together. So just make sure you check that on the YouTube page. So we have that we need to be aware of. But then in terms of other data, really, it's not going to be this week. It's next week that we really have to be aware. And I'm pulling up what we're getting next week. And it's quite a bit of data that we have to pay attention to. And remember, next week is the last week of August before we shift into September, which really is a stinker of a month in terms of trading. But here's what we're going to get next week. And there's two really critical pieces of data that we're getting starting on Thursday when we get GDP, which is going to be important. And then Friday, what are we going to get? The Fed's preferred gauge of inflation, PCE. Inflation came in hot last week. So those numbers are also weighing on traders and investors in terms of what they see happening in the market. So you do have three elements of indecision, of potential volatility that have to be resolved first before a move higher can happen. And so it's got to start with Powell on Friday. And oh yeah, I completely left out that Wednesday, we're going to get the FOMC minutes. So that'll give some insight into the previous meeting that was had. So if you're wondering why the sell down, that's really what's driving it. We don't know what Powell's going to say, if he's going to come out dovish. If he is, then we'll probably see a corresponding bounce from his words. If he's hawkish, that can intensify the selling. And then we get that data next week, which really can intensify things, drive them lower. Again, September is pretty weak. But just looking across the board, you saw some pretty big sell downs today. Palantir down $16.28, 9.35%. That's a huge move down for Palantir. Boeing, $7.41. Robinhood, $7.52. Tesla, $5.85. We look at some of the big boys. Apple held in pretty strongly, only down 33 cents. That's been kind of holding in there here as of late. Meta down $15.89. Netflix down $30.94. What else we have here? NVIDIA sold down $6.37, which is a pretty big move for a $175 stock. So you did see those bigger, large tech companies dropping in price, and that brought down the broader market. So the ultimate question here, is this just a dip? Or is this a sign of a bigger crash to come? And I will end this video with this. Is typically when we are anticipating rate cuts. If you just go back and look to last year, there was, even though we had the flash crash last August, you did see buying come in and you did see the market rise higher leading into that first rate cut that took place in September. And then what happened after that rate cut? There was a sell down. And so more than likely, this is just a temporary dip. Doesn't mean that we can't start a full-on market correction. That can happen, but more than likely, this is just a dip, a pullback, maybe 3%, 5%, 7%, 10% before the rate cuts come into effect in September. And then we should get the true sell down. And historically, if you go back and look at when the Fed has cut rates, what happens? There's buying leading into that event and then selling falling after. Go check it out on your trading view. So more than likely, this is just a dip, but the markets will do what they're going to do. We all know that they're irrational. We know that they can do crazy things longer than you could stay liquid and solvent in your account. And that's why you have to trade with a plan. So there you have it. Just an update on the markets, what's transpiring. Don't forget FOMC minutes tomorrow, 3 p.m. Jackson Hole on Friday. You could watch it here with me live streaming when hopefully I have the bugs worked out technically. And that's going to do it for this video. I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you for all your support here of Courage Pays Better Than Fear Trading. Smash that subscribe button, and I will see you here for the next video. Take care, everyone. Make it a great day.